Turns out I'm not able to have a baby. So, does that give my sister-in-law the excuse to make it against me and say, oh, you're not good enough for my brother because you can't have a baby for him? Well, how about this, guys? I discovered her secret. She's having an affair with her cousin, and I'm going to expose her to the entire family.
I'm at the verge of walking out of my marriage. Don't blame me, though, because I have been pushed out of it long ago. I got married to my husband Lucas 6 years ago, and we are yet to have kids. While I'm infertile, Lucas and I met while we were in school. He's from a rich home, but that did not affect the way he related with other people. He's a quiet person who did not want problems in any way, and he did his best to avoid issues that led to disagreements even when he was in the right. Lucas had a twin sister called Rachel. They were identical, but that was just in looks. Rachel was way different from Lucas. She was toxic and entitled whenever she was around Lucas. He never complained, though, and that's because they had always been close right from when they were young. The bond that they shared was indeed strong. I did not object to it during the early years of our marriage, and I tried to be the lady who would really not get married to a guy and separate him from his family. Rachel would always show up unannounced at our house, and though I was not comfortable with it, I simply overlooked it. Rachel was not married, and she still lived with her parents, who were nice people. Rachel claimed to be a remote worker, but I can't say what she did. Besides, she always called on Lucas for money, and Lucas supported not just her, but their other siblings as he was the most successful of them all. Yeah, back to my infertility story. Lucas and I visit a medical consultant, and after a series of testing, they discovered my womb was damaged. The news hurt me, and I was in an emotional place of pain where everything just simply irritated me. It was during this time that Rachel showed up unannounced at our home with her bags to spend the weekend. Rachel's presence in my home got me irritated. Her toxicity and entitlement began showing up in my face, and what I ordinarily overlooked in the past now got me angry. This was as a result of where I was emotionally, and anyone who had a sense would understand. The next week came, and Rachel was still around. It was on a Monday, and I was on leave. Lucas and I were discussing when Rachel came in and requested Lucas give her a certain amount of money by the month's end as she needed to do something. The amount she called was huge, and it's not something you would give without asking what it's going to be used for. I asked Rachel what she needed such a huge amount of money for, and she just sharply rebuked me, saying, "That's none of my business." Well, I was offended, but I said nothing. I did not want to create a scene, and Lucas said that he would see what he could do by the end of the month. He left for work, and I decided to talk to Rachel. I was already struggling to hold back my anger, and I hoped it would go away when she apologized for how she had behaved, but that was not the case. I told Rachel that I simply felt offended by the way that she had spoken to me, but she said I should not have stuck my nose in her business. What rubbish! She was telling me I had no right to interfere in my husband's business, and I was just mad, but I still tried talking to her with a bit of respect. I told her that Lucas was my husband, and there was nothing wrong with a woman being concerned about where her husband's money went. After all, what belonged to my husband could be considered to be mine since we both shared everything. Rachel immediately called me a gold digger who wanted to take the wealth of her brother. She accused me of trying to keep Lucas from helping her and her siblings the way that she wanted. It was wrong for her to accuse me of something out of that magnitude, and my husband never did for my siblings the kind of things he did for Rachel and her siblings. And I've never for once complained or stood in his way. I told her it was not my intent to turn the face of her brother away from her or hold back his hand from helping her. I was only concerned as the amount she was asking for was a lot. The discussion was soon turning into an argument, and I decided to leave since I was getting accused rather than apologized to. I turned to leave, and that's when she said what baffled me. Rachel said rather than hoard my husband's wealth, I was to focus my energy on giving him an heir who would inherit it. Her statement was too painful to ignore, and I told her that rather than spend her life begging her brother for assistance, she should go get a life and let us live in peace. Rachel was now so mad and she slapped me. Rachel's older than me, but like they say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. I returned the slap with two of mine, and a fight ensued, and I was simply overpowered by her, and she left me with some bodily injuries, though she had some of her own. I was left in anger and pain, and I called Lucas, who was now at work, but he was not picking up. I thought about driving down to his place of business, but I decided to not let my anger lead me into creating a scene at my husband's workplace, as that was exactly what I wanted to do, but I waited till Lucas returned home. Lucas came home, and turned out the reason he had not picked up my call wasn't because he had a lot of work to do. It was because his sister had beat me to it and called to tell him a made-up story of how I attacked her, and that she asked him for money. From the way Lucas sounded, I could tell he had fallen for the lie. I explained to him what exactly happened, and I even showed him the bite mark which his sister had inflicted on me. And I expected him to apologize and deal with the situation very well. My husband apologized for the injury which I had sustained, but he said he was not going to call his sister to caution her or shout at her, as I made the mistake of starting the fight with her. And I quote you this: "She is not just my sister or your sister-in-law, she's equally your elder, and you should have spoken with me rather than confront her." He even went to note that he had observed what happened in the morning, and if he did not see it as a big deal to act on, why was I supposed to do so? Lucas's statement or action did nothing to help the situation at hand. I replied that he was not going to act on it because he did not understand the part of the role of the husband is to protect his wife against everybody, and that includes his family if necessary. Lucas did not react to my statement. He just walked away, and that got me even more angry. I'm telling ya. His sister had shut me upright in his presence and called me a gold digger, and used my infertility situation to absolutely ridicule me, and went further to inflict injuries on me, and the only thing my husband could do was to walk away. I ignored him, but I was not going to let the situation die down like that. I decided I was going to see my in-laws, tell them about how Rachel was tearing my husband and me apart. So, I went to see them, and I did this behind my husband's back. I knew he would not be happy when he found out, as he wanted peace and not trouble with anybody. But peace can sometimes be gotten after conflict. Well, my in-laws are nice people. I got to the house and they were shocked the moment they saw me. They asked if Lucas had started beating me. Their tone showed they were willing to deal with him if he was, and I broke down in tears, and my mother-in-law tried to console me. My tears were not an act, it was genuine. I informed them that Rachel was responsible for the injuries which they could see on my body, and my husband had refused to address the issue. I narrated to them how Rachel had taunted me using my condition of infertility, and how she accused me of discouraging Lucas from helping his siblings. My in-laws were so mad at Rachel, as they had repeatedly told her and her siblings in the past to allow Lucas and I to build our home in peace, and not act like his home was theirs. Their anger, however, was much towards Lucas, who had wanted to sweep the whole thing under the carpet. They promised they would deal with the situation. I got home, awaiting the actions of my in-laws, and Lucas got home that evening and asked if I had visited his parents to tell them about the issue that transpired between Rachel and me. I did not deny the fact, as I suspected Rachel must have been aware of my visit and alerted him. Lucas was offended, and he asked why would I go behind his back to his parents, who have now called for a family meeting to resolve the whole issue. I simply just could not hide my feelings of resentment. I told him to not bark at me for doing something he was supposed to have done, and that is fighting to keep our marriage at peace. We went to his parents' house over the weekend. Everybody was present as it was a family gathering, but they were aware of the reason for the gathering. My father-in-law began by telling everyone present that he had set the example of what a husband and father should be for them, and stated he expected nothing less. He went on to tell them that an issue was brought by me, and he asked me to go ahead and re-say the things that I said. I started by reminding my in-laws about the recent discovery of my infertility and how I was struggling to deal with the pain. I then recounted my ordeal with Rachel to everybody present. Her siblings were not pleased with her, and it was not the first time they would be hearing it, as Rachel had given them her version before then. One thing I was happy about was that her siblings knew how toxicity, it was too well with her. Lucas, however, was docile. He had his head bowed down as I spoke, and his parents shot him a very disappointed look. After I was done with my narration, my father-in-law inquired from Rachel if what I was saying was actually true, and Rachel simply just could not wait to speak. She started trying to sell her lie. She told everybody present that she was not wrong in calling me a gold digger, as that is exactly what I was. She was so good at twisting things. She said that I was not the first infertile lady in the whole universe, and there were other means of getting children, but I simply refused to do so as I did not love Lucas enough to start up a family with him. She claimed my goal was to divorce Lucas and divert his money in my direction. Wow, words are pretty powerful. I looked at the faces of her siblings, and it was though they were almost falling for the lie. I immediately broke down. I told everybody present there that I had never asked Lucas to deny them help, even though my siblings were not helped by him as much as they were. This was a fact Lucas, who was present, could attest to. Rachel shouted at me, but my father-in-law rebuked her. He then proceeded to ask Lucas what his take was on the matter and how he handled or intended to handle it. The question just revealed that Lucas had not taken his father's training and examples seriously. Lucas said he told me to let the matter be, and he was not willing to take sides with one family against the other. All he wanted, according to him, was peace. Peace? My husband was talking about peace when I was in a physical and emotional pain. How did he expect me to shake hands with his sister and act like all was well when she still felt like I deserved the treatment she had given me? His response angered his father, who immediately shouted at him. Lucas's mother then began reprimanding Rachel that she had always advised her to give my husband and me some space. The brother she knew was still the same, but had a wife who, has to be his priority, you know. She noted that Rachel was wrong to have beaten me up in my own husband's house and used my infertility to taunt me. I fell in love afresh with my mother-in-law, and she said I had done nothing wrong in trying to find out what Rachel wanted such a huge amount of my husband's money for. My father-in-law did not address Rachel's misbehavior, as his wife had said enough. He proceeded to tell Lucas how he was failing as a husband, and he pointed out that Lucas was supposed to stand up for me no matter what. He then warned Rachel to stay clear of my marriage, and even demanded she apologize to me right then and there. Rachel was pained. I could see it right here in her face, but she had no option. She reluctantly offered me a half-baked apology, and one that meant little to me. Before leaving the house that day, my father-in-law asked Lucas to spend time making up his attitude when we got home. We got home and Lucas was not going to say or did anything to me for the next 3 days. I finally confronted him on the cold attitude and distance from me, and he said he's simply embarrassed because I had embarrassed him in front of his parents and siblings, who now think of him as a man who cannot handle his home. I did not offer an apology for telling his parents he was a coward and a failure who was not man enough to defend me when I needed it the most. I just kept mute till he noted that his sister had been right in asking him to divorce me. An infertile wife, according to her, who can paint a man to be useless in front of his family. Well, I was surprised that his sister was still giving him advice, and the moron was receiving it. I knew I had lost my husband to his sister. He worked out on me, and the malice resumed. Different thoughts began running across my mind about the possibility of waking up one morning to discover Lucas wants a divorce. I decided I would walk out of the marriage, but not empty-handed, not at all. I thought long and hard before finally coming up with a game plan. I simply planned to make peace. And, well, I know it sounds absurd, and that's why it would work. I tried looking for ways to pacify my husband, Lucas. Absolutely. But he just kept providing stubbornness and all, and what he does not know is that I have disconnected him emotionally. After exhausting every means to get back his attention, I did something I never imagined I would do. I begged Rachel. Yes, if you've been following me, then you know that offering Rachel an apology or even making peace with her is something I would never dream of doing. But it was the path I had tread in my plan. It was ever going to be successful. I had to do it. I reached out to Rachel and pleaded, and, well, we met at an eatery. She was hesitant, but agreed to do so after I had pleaded with her. During our meeting, I never brought up the fact that I knew she had been advising my husband to throw me out as I was, quote, barren and rebellious. This is even after her parents had sternly asked her to put some distance between herself and us. Rather than start up a fight with her, I began telling her I was sorry. Sorry for all that happened between us, and I claimed I was ready to move past it and focus on a great future with my sister-in-law by my side. I could see her ego. Well, it was starting to swell, and she fell for my fake apology, and I then went ahead to tell her that my husband had not been talking to me ever since. I did not blame her for that, however. I rather reaped the blame upon myself, and the first sentence that came out of Rachel's mouth was that she was glad I had realized I was the one troubling the peace of the family all along. I just kept quiet while she enjoyed her moment of glory shaming me. After she was done with her long talk, she finally agreed to help me talk to Lucas. She came over to the house later in the day while Lucas was around, and she told him I had finally come to my senses and was ready for peace. It was then my husband decided to look in my direction again. So, I'm married to a husband who's overly attached to his sister. We're now one big happy family, living together in peace. Rachel now comes to the house where she spends days, and I just try to act like her presence does not disgust me. She carries herself like she's the owner of the house, and I don't act like it means anything to me. I even go as far as seeking her opinion on matters that don't concern her. My husband Lucas is now cool with me, as there was peace between his sisters and me. He's not talked about anything of the divorce ever since. Rachel is currently in my house, and she would be leaving in 3 days. I plan on telling you about my plans to get surrogacy. I want her to buy the idea, so with her by my side, it would be easier getting her brother to agree with it. Once our child is born, I would then file for divorce on the grounds of emotional torture and irreconcilable differences. This would make the court compel him into paying child support. And, of course, alimony. I would leave the marriage, but with my child and money. Remarriage is a no for me, but I won't live a lonely life since, I'm going to have a child by my side. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Today's story is so wild. I mean, the ending of that first part is absolutely insane with OP's plan, but I have some exciting news. I have compiled all 4 updates, and I'm telling you guys right now, things are about to get twisted. If you guys are having a great day, let me know about it in the comment section. Hey, if you're having a bad day, tell me what's going wrong. I hope you guys are having a good day, though. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for daily videos, and let's see what's going on with OP and Rachel. Update number 1. I met with Rachel recently, and I told her I decided to get a child via surrogacy. I claimed her talk in the past about not giving her brother an heir inspired my decision. Rachel smiled and listened as I told her that I was yet to discuss it with my husband. She felt important that I had considered speaking with her about it first. It was a strategic move on my part, and I knew if I raised the issue of surrogacy with my husband, he would probably want to get his sister's opinion about it, and she opposed it. The whole kick her out and get a new wife advice could start up again. Rachel welcomed the idea. She noted there was nothing wrong with surrogacy, which had helped barren women like me keep their homes together. Each time we spoke, she always found a way to rub it in my face so that I could not conceive a child via a natural process. I agreed with her even though I was pained. She went ahead to say that she would help me talk to my husband and even further look for a suitable surrogate. I feigned happiness and appreciation. I told her it meant a lot to me to always have her around. Rachel's ego had been so inflated, and she said she was glad I was no longer foolish to not see her importance. She just used every single opportunity to subtly annoy me. She came over to our home by the weekend, and we both talked with my husband, Lucas. The stupid man whom I call my husband was not ashamed that our marriage had absolutely just turned into a triangle. He rather said he was glad and sisters were good and on talking terms. It was on that basis that he accepted to go through with the process, and he acknowledged he was too busy to go hunting for a surrogate mother. And that was when Rachel noted that she had already had somebody in mind and would make the introduction very, very soon. Well, we did not need to wait so long to meet the surrogate mother, as Rachel brought her the very next day. The speed with which the surrogate was available made me raise an eyebrow, and it was though she had reached conclusions with her before bringing her over. The would-be surrogate is called Stacy. I was not surprised when I learned she was Rachel's friend. I just knew Rachel was up to something that would enlarge her pockets. Lucas and I were both interested in getting to know Stacy. But Rachel, as usual, was running the show. She vouched for Stacy for her life and claimed that they had been friends for over a decade. According to her, she had chosen Stacy because it was the best way to get a surrogate who you knew on a personal level. Well, she was the one who knew Stacy up close. Lucas and I did not, and it did not matter to Lucas, though. He readily agreed, and I did not object. It's not my business. We could use Rachel's suggested surrogate, but nobody would come close to my child after she must have been born, and I've gotten my divorce from Lucas. We would be meeting in a few days to decide the terms of the contract. Update number 2. The impression Rachel had given us was that we would sit down with Stacy and discuss the terms of the surrogacy. This included the price and rules, which was expected of both parties. Rachel, however, came to the house a few days later without Stacy, and she laid out the terms. It was wrong. It was not professional in any way. Well, the would-be surrogate was supposed to be present, but this was something my husband simply did not question. Rachel was just pushing the whole thing like she wanted a child more than Lucas and I. She began calling out the conditions, which Stacy had given, and it was okay till she got to the amount that she would charge. To start with, she said Stacy was a human being who should be treated as such, and this was just an opening line to make us bendable to the demands. She went on to say, we would take up the responsibility of providing for all of Stacy's needs from the moment the process began to the moment it ended. Well, that's okay. We expected that. Rachel went further to say that we would accompany Stacy to the weekly doctor appointments, which she would be attending. Lucas noted he was pretty busy doing this and that, and I, on the other hand, had a job, but I promised I would take out the time to do it. But hey, the conditions, they're not over yet. She said that we would still keep in touch with the surrogate after the process. We got to the part where Rachel disclosed the amount Stacy would charge, and it was an absolute staggering amount. $30,000! This was too much. Yes, Lucas was doing great and I had a job, but that amount was way beyond what we had anticipated. This was besides what we would spend on Stacy during the entire period, and we would go ahead and fund the process, but once we're done, we would need to work out our butts just to be able to provide for the child after spending that much. Well, it is Lucas who would need to work his butt off to pay for the child support and alimony, as I would be getting a divorce from him, so hey, I didn't bother. I was surprised when Lucas asked his sister if we could not look for some other surrogate who would charge less. This was actually the first time I'd seen him question or hesitate in taking his sister's opinion. Rachel began trying to sell Stacy to us. She claimed that the amount Stacy was requesting was very normal for the emotional and mental stress which she would go through for 9 whole months. She asked us to see the money as a form of compensation for what she was going to do. Giving us the child I could not give us. I still felt the price was simply too much, but I kept my thoughts to myself. Lucas, on the other hand, just accepted. It hurts that when it comes to his sister Rachel, he does not need to be pushed too much to do something. And Rachel just smiled when Lucas bought her suggestions, and her smile was an indication and a plot she was hatching that was going in her favor. Update number 3. I told you guys during my last update that Rachel was up to something, right? Well, I was correct. She got us to make the agreement official by signing the legal documents, and with the way she was into the whole thing, you would think she was the surrogate. I began attending doctor's appointments with our surrogate Stacy, and Stacy is not as toxic as her friend, but her mouth runs like a tap. She finds it difficult to keep information to herself for too long, and all you need to do is initiate a conversation with her, and she would go on talking until your ears would bleed. I was very careful to befriend someone like that, so a friend of Rachel cannot be my friend. I had to play the friendship part, though, as she was going to be the surrogate of my child. During one of our visits to the doctor, Stacy was taken in to have an ultrascan so they could see how the child was actually doing. I held her phone while the procedure went on, and Rachel began calling and simply would not stop. As the call became so much, I decided to pick up and tell her that she could not speak with Stacy as she was undergoing a procedure, but I was shocked by what I heard Rachel say. Rachel began shouting over the phone and accusing Stacy of ghosting her. I wanted to explain that I was not Stacy, but Rachel is the kind of person who, when angry, you just simply can't keep quiet till she vented out her anger. She began calling Stacy different kinds of names like a thief, a snake, a backstabbing jerk, and some pretty terrible names that I don't really want to mention. But the moment that she was actually done talking, she cut the call without letting me say a word. I began wondering when her relationship with Stacy had gone so sour. I mean, it's been less than 2 months since she praised Stacy in front of us, and, well, I knew something was wrong, so I waited for Stacy to come out. Stacy finally gets done, and both mother and child were in good shape. I told Stacy and, well, said that Rachel had been trying to reach her, and she said she would call her once she gets home. I then asked her if there was a problem. She initially denied it, but hey, I'm not stupid, so I asked her again why her friend, whom she had absolutely no problems with, would be calling her names. The moment I said so, she got so mad and said Rachel was just a toxic human being, not a friend. She told me that the reason Rachel had accused her of theft was because they had an agreement that Stacy would give her part of the money, which we would pay for her, and Rachel felt she did not want to honor it. I explained to her that since an agreement was in place, then she was to honor it, but she said she could not do so as Lucas and I had not given her the agreed $30,000. The money was going to be paid after the birth of our child, though, and we covered the cost of her living. My curiosity led me into asking the amount, and she said it was half of the money. Half of the money? It meant Rachel was going to be earning as much as Stacy, who was the actual surrogate. Stacy then told me it was Rachel that had suggested they doubled the amount. I shouted at how unfair Rachel was behaving towards her, and that was how Stacy opened up and began telling me about the disgusting, hypocritical things which Rachel did. The interesting part was, what she said was how Rachel was having an affair with her cousin. I was stunned, and my reaction made Stacy keep on talking. She even showed me proof of her discussions with Rachel to back up what she was actually saying, and I assured her my absolute confidentiality and told her we would talk further on the matter later. I'm currently adding a twist to my revenge. Update number 4. Hey guys, so this update would be brief, but I believed it is the most interesting part of the story. The part where everyone who had treated me badly via their toxic or docile nature pays for it. I began spending more time with Stacy just so we would chit-chat. Most of our discussion was centered on Rachel, and Stacy sure had a lot of information about her. I had Stacy send me screenshot after screenshot after screenshot of her chats with Rachel where she talked about her escapades with her cousin. I was equally working behind the scenes to secure my divorce from Lucas, and I told nobody about that, though. I just kept quiet till Stacy had our baby. After my child was born, my husband paid Stacy the agreed amount, and though I had earlier advised her to honor her agreement with Rachel, I now discouraged her from doing so. I told her to relocate and use the money to set herself up for life. She took my advice, and Rachel has not heard from her ever since, and Rachel has been bitter, but she can't tell anyone about it as she would expose herself by doing so. I organized the party for my son, and I took it upon myself to personally invite every member of my husband's family. To make them anticipate the party, I told them it was not just a party where I would be celebrating the birth of my son, but where I would equally celebrate them all for their presence in my life. The day arrived, and the event was held in the home Lucas and I shared. It was on the evening of a weekend. After everyone had settled in, I asked for the attention of the family as I wanted to make a toast. I began by thanking my father-in-law, and it came from the heart. I told them how they were the best in-laws anybody could ever wish to have, and everyone was happy with the way things were going. But I quickly changed the narrative. I told my in-laws that it was a pity their kids, Lucas and his twin sister Rachel, did not take the life lesson on character and responsibility which they had taught them over the years, and everybody looked at me in surprise. I immediately raised a glass to Rachel and the love of her life. Her cousin. I exposed her with the evidence which I collected from Stacy, and while everybody was still in shock, I turned to Lucas and told him that his lovely sister, whom he prioritized over me, had wanted to siphon him of $15,000. He was busy dealing with a shock when I threw divorce papers right at him. I made him understand that he had his sister to thank for it before walking out on them with my child. I went under the radar throughout the time, and the divorce was going on, and my in-laws wanted to reach out to me to simply make peace, but I could not. The divorce proceedings took longer than expected, but it finally ended with the judge mandating Lucas to pay child support and alimony, while I got custody of our son. I'm a happy single mother, and marriage is not on my agenda anymore at all. I'm okay, though, as I have a child and we're both being taken care of.
Alright guys, so the comment section had a little surprising twist to it. they did not really necessarily say that the sister-in-law was the worst person of the story. Oh no, by far, most of the people were hating on OP's husband, simply because, well, they thought that he was not there for OP, and the fact that he was agreeing with his sister over and over and over again instead of agreeing with, well, the woman he's supposed to love and marry and just be with for the rest of his life, and have this baby with. Well, this kind of turned out to be a disaster, as we figured out at the end of the story, but I want to know, from you guys, do you think OP's revenge was petty or it was 100% deserved? Drop your comments down below. Let's talk about that. Guys, my name's Mr. Reddito. Thank you for joining me today. If you want more daily videos, hit the subscribe button. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and just remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.